Like to call to order the meeting of the Personnel and Administration Committee. Oh, wait a minute, Madam Clerk is not here to call the roll.
I'll text her.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I text her the link. I think, yeah, she has the other one.
Alderman, did she respond to you? So I don't want to just do the same thing you did.
No, she didn't respond, and I had to.
Okay.
When she did, I had to call her, and she was able to pick up. So you may want to call her, maybe quick.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I had problems getting on. Let me put the
Yeah.
okay.
All right. With that, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Personnel and Administration Committee for Thursday, October 17th. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Cone,
Present.
Alderman Aldridge. I'm sorry, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderman Aldridge.
Present. Oh, present.
President Green.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. 3 present, you have quorum.
A quorum being present, I will entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from Thursday, October 10th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
3 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion on the approval of the minutes. We have no board bills or resolutions to review, but we will go to committee discussions and start with item number 1, which is employee performance reviews. Director Ingracia, I will turn it over to you to provide an update.
Thanks so much, Madam President and members of the committee. Based on the comments from the committee members at the last meeting, we discussed performance reviews and the clerks and Tracy reaching out to staff and legislative assistants on the topic. I incorporated feedback and updated the excuse me, employee performance review process. So just, I guess, some highlights are this timeline is truncated. So instead of a 5 or 6 week process, it's now 3 weeks. We can come back to the items I have highlighted in purple because those are outstanding questions I have, but let me know when you're ready for me to scroll to the next sheet.
Okay. So week 1 is the self-assessment, goal setting. Week 2, direct supervisor would do the performance review form. And then week 3, the employee could provide comments or feedback on the performance review.
That's the gist of it, yes.
Okay.
Am I okay to scroll?
Yes, go ahead.
So then the instructions are the scores are all the same. You get 5 points for exceptional through 1 as unsatisfactory. In the brief explanation column that we will see below that we discussed last time, a brief explanation will be required in that space if you're rating somebody as exceptional or unsatisfactory. Otherwise, it's optional for the supervisor to do that. And then this just further explains what the performance measures are for the different scores. And then you would choose whether or not you were undertaking a self-assessment or if this was something that was being filled out by the supervisor. The categories are almost all the same, with the exception of taking out a couple of items that we received some feedback on, like taking on additional responsibilities. Seemed like it's not necessarily the best thing to do that if it's being required or expected on a regular basis versus just stepping up to the plate when you're needed in a pinch. So we took some of those out, and made it 10 questions for staff employees. And that's what you'll see here. And then the additional competencies for anyone who's a supervisor. So those would be filled out only for those employees. These are all the same as what we went over last time. And then based on whether or not you fall under staff or supervisor, this is the range of scores that you can receive for your overall evaluation score. This is the tool we'll start using this year for professional development opportunities and goal setting and planning. We obviously won't have that to undertake performance reviews this year, but we will have the job descriptions to utilize. And then the employee will have space provided if they are interested in providing additional comments. And then we incorporated feedback that it was just the employee acknowledging that they went under, or they undertook the performance review process, but they don't necessarily sign agreement with the review.
Any questions from members of the committee or comments?
I'll scroll back up to the beginning because one of the things that the clerks and I had talked about was, theoretically, an alderperson could, if they chose to, review any number of people who they somewhat supervise, or, some secretaries obviously have a few people. So what the committee was interested in doing to make sure that, obviously everyone will be reviewed by their direct supervisor, but what do we do with additional reviews if we choose to do that? If we would have performance review forms and average out the number of the scores, if we wanted to put a limit on the number of reviews that one person could receive. There was just not a lot of clarity about what we thought was the best way forward in that regard. But I do think we should have a conversation about having some sort of restrictions or qualifications on who can review whom and how many one person could receive.
My
Alderman.
thoughts on that. Oh, yeah, thank you, Madam President. My thoughts on that would be whoever the employee's direct manager is would be the one who does the performance evaluation. And so any points that are associated with their performance should come directly from their manager. So if that's, for an example, one of the executive secretaries, then their manager would be, someone obviously in the clerk's office who they would directly report to, deal with their time management, all of that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, that manager should be the one that's reaching out to each respective alder person to solicit feedback on that individual's performance. And they can use this as a template if they wish. But otherwise, if there's, feedback or concerns or kudos that, any alder person wants to provide, for that executive secretary, then it should be done through their direct manager, and would not necessarily be a direct evaluation that would be, kind of weighted, if you will.
So Alderman Cone, can I ask a clarifying question there?
Yeah.
So are you thinking, so I'm thinking there's kind of two classifications in a way of employees. There's like your executive secretaries that older people, I think, really do kind of have a day-to-day, interaction oversight function for. And then you kind of have like our clerks and other office staff that I think definitely, makes sense to go through that supervisor structure. So for like the executive secretaries, are you thinking that the only evaluation comes from the clerks, or that each older person that has that executive secretary provides a review and the clerk? I'm trying to understand.
No, I think it should come from the clerk, but the clerk should be working with the alder persons that those secretaries support. That secretarial support can change in the, middle of a session, depending upon, uh, we've had a couple conversations in, closed session about this recently. But, if for example, if a secretary leaves and we need to redeploy resources, or we don't, rehire a secretary. So sometimes that, aldermanic support structure is going to change with each secretary. But I think the clerk has a responsibility as the, manager of those employees, because they don't report into three different alder persons. They report up through the clerk's office and support three different alder persons. So they should be, sending out an email. And I know this has been done in the past, not consistently, but it has been done in the past, where the clerk would solicit feedback from the alders with respect to, their executive secretary. So, I think that information that's collected from each alder, should be incorporated into the clerk's assessment. But there are also, responsibilities that the executive secretaries do that aren't given to them by their alder persons. I know at least in the past we've had, executive secretaries that kind of act in the receptionist capacity or rotate through the, receptionist desk as necessary if there's people who have time off, or there's, special projects that get assigned to them if there's minutes that need to be typed up, or handling kind of setup for our meetings, things of that nature. So ultimately they report up through the clerk, and that person should be responsible for the actual evaluation, but the clerk should 100% be reaching out to the stakeholders who those people support, which would be each of their respective alder persons.
So then those older persons would give feedback to the clerk rather than filling out the form.
Correct.
Okay.
May I make a clarifying statement?
Yes.
Most of the staff on the BOA side will be, their direct supervisor would be Tracy Phillips.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so that would, and so I can, if it makes sense to the committee, just add some language here in week 2 about what that process might look like. And I'm curious if you think it should be something that's being done during both weeks 1 and 2, because if there is value in getting feedback from other persons or other individuals who supervise more indirectly, it might take longer than just a week to engender responses on those things.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think we may need more than 1 week for Tracy or the clerk or whoever the direct supervisor is to track down older people and get that feedback.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to tweak that language a little bit. I think we're very close. I thought we might have this in final form, but I think maybe the next time we meet, we'll get there.
I have another question as well. So, and I think this can be different in different places, but where like places I have worked previously and gone through this process, it's never been just like one person that does the review. It might be that like whoever you directly report does, but then, another person who you work closely with, who might be in a, unilateral position or something, also provides that evaluation, and then scores have been averaged. And I think the reason for doing that is if one person scores somebody very low, for whatever reason, that there's kind of like that check on it. I don't know if that's worth considering or not. Like, does it make sense to have more than one person provide an evaluation?
I think just because this is something that we're trying to roll out and it's a relatively new process, I think we need to try and keep it simple, keep it sweet. And I think, if we're going to start having those conversations, Madam President, then, who is that? How do we make sure that that's, done equitably and fairly? I think,
Yeah.
doing something like that is going to require a lot more conversation.
And I think
So,
perhaps software. So where places that I've worked, basically they had a software system that did kind of a lottery. Uh, like your direct supervisor provides an evaluation, and then there was a lottery system that was like with everybody in your kind of like lateral position that then, would randomly send it out to like somebody else to provide the evaluation.
yeah,
That makes sense.
but I
So,
think that also, that can lend itself to other issues where, especially if you're, dealing with peer evaluations, then, there might be conflict with, folks, and that might be, so there's just, I feel like that's something that we need to have, a much more robust conversation around.
okay.
But certainly it would help to have those types of systems in place in order to, utilize those tools. But I think just based off of what we have before us and the timeline that we're looking at, we should probably keep it to their direct supervisor providing the actual evaluation, but then, the supervisor should be soliciting feedback from stakeholders, whether that's alderpersons or even their peer group.
Okay. Director Ingracia.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess I also, to add to what Alderman Code mentioned, I mean, this is definitely going to be a work in progress. I think we're in a pretty good spot. And there's always room for improvement. And I think we'll be able to continue to do that. It's not like once we pass something like this, it has to be, it never changes. And I did want to mention too, you had asked at the last committee hearing, and I should have already mentioned, to look at what other city departments use for performance review. And nobody that I could find has a performance review management like software system. So everyone just uses the civil service form that's kind of similar to what's being presented here. But I do have it to add to something that we get bids on after constituent management services. So it may be it may be easier to do something like that in the future. Because I do agree, in an ideal world, we would have more than one person review an individual, but I don't know that we're quite there yet.
Okay. Alderman Cone.
And just to piggyback off of Director Ingracia, the conversations I've had with the personnel director, they are looking at talent management systems that would have that capability. Obviously, they're not currently doing that or implementing those tools, but they are, putting out RFPs, is my understanding. And then I've also brought that up on calls with the mayor. So it might be that folks who are in the, merit system and the civil service system will also start utilizing those tools. So maybe it's, something that we try to partner with them on instead of going on our own.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so we'll put a pin in that. Is there any other feedback to be incorporated in this?
The only other piece that I need to work on is either what we would call a mandatory improvement plan or a performance improvement plan
Mhm.
that would be required if an employee received an overall score of unsatisfactory. And so I was hoping to get some feedback from the committee today. Um, can you see that screen?
Yes.
Okay. The city doesn't have a form for their mandatory improvement plans, just some kind of guidance on steps.
Okay.
But there are a lot of examples of something that's a bit more structured that I could put together to present to the committee the next time you meet. I think it would also be something helpful to get feedback from employees on.
Agreed. So if maybe you want to use this as sort of a framework to
Mhm.
build out a tool in consultation with the clerks and employees,
Yep.
bring something back to us, I think that would be beneficial.
Okay. I'll add that to the list. But that was the last question on the employee review form that I had. But if anybody has any other questions, I think like I said, we're getting close. We're not quite there yet.
Alderman Aldridge.
Offices, the president office and the clerk office for getting us closer and working on this.
I see Alderman Narayan's here. Did you have any questions, comments?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Oh, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard's here now too. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, any questions or comments? All right, I'm seeing none. If, I guess if you want to make those couple of, changes and bring it back next week when hopefully we can finally approve it.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Go back to, so item number 2 for today, we have the employee handbook. Director Ingracia.
Sure. The next step that I think we were going to work on is the grievance process.
Okay.
And I think if we can, while we're reaching out to staff again to collect feedback on the mandatory improvement plan, it would be helpful to get feedback on the current grievance process that's in the handbook. And then
Okay.
I can put something together for the committee to review.
Okay. Any questions from any members of the committee about that? All right, so if you want to, during that process, get feedback on the grievance process to bring that back before us, that would be appreciated as well.
Will do.
All right, item number 3 is the badge pass system. So we had some, I guess, questions and concern about security at the board. And so we had asked Director Ingracia to look into what it would take to get us a system like they have for the mayor's office, where you're able to actually see who's on the outside of a door, and be able to have like a doorbell type function for letting in. So Director Ingracia.
Thanks, Madam President. We were able to receive a bid from RJP Electric through the facilities department to add a badge pass system that's similar to what 230 uses, as you mentioned. So that would allow for room 230, 232, and 234 to utilize a badge pass or swipe system instead of key entry. And there would be reception in 230 would handle 230 and 234 entry. 232, the president's office, would be on our own system. And then that's the 33,000 you see right here. And then this alternate, I think it's important while we're doing this, if we're able to, we have a lot of issues with those kitchenette doors, which lead into the chambers being left open or having people come in and out that shouldn't be in there. So the total for all of this would be $47,640, which we could take out of the facilities and grounds budget line item. And I'm happy to take questions.
Alderman Cone, any questions?
I 100% applaud this, support it. I think that it's way overdue.
Alderman Aldridge?
Ditto Alderman Cone. I guess for the kitchen, since we have two entrance, you know, one kind of by the altar side and then one over by the bathroom side, which most people don't use. Would it be on both sides of the kitchen door, or would it just be kind of that main one?
It would be on both, Alderman Aldridge.
Okay. Outside of that, no questions.
And Alderwoman Clark Hubbard put in the chat that she does not have any questions. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve moving forward with the entrance and exit security updates to the board.
I move that we approve the expenses for the entry and exit security system for the Board of Aldermen for rooms 230, 232, 234 at a price not to exceed the estimate provided by Director Ingracia.
And kitchenette area, second.
Oh, I just included that in room 230, but yes, including the kitchenette area.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Green,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderman Aldridge,
Aye.
President Green,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye. Aye.
4 aye votes.
Okay, by your vote, you sustain the motion. And then we are going to dispense with line item number 4 and push that to next week because we were not, we didn't get the correct link set up to have a closed session today. So we will push that discussion to next week. So with that, are there any other announcements? Seeing none, all members are present. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in
Previous-
favor signify by saying
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.